Warning: Dungeons & Dragons contains material that is not suitable for children, people with heart conditions, weak-minded individuals, or anyone easily offended. If you are included in that list, then please stop watching this video now, for your own safety. Everyone else, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video.
Previously we responded to Chimerian on dungeon crawling, and the misconception that combat is the only possible thing that could happen. Here we see a snippet from the DMG that states otherwise in regards to random encounters, which we will be crushing misinformation about in this video. Here you see the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, 2nd edition, Dungeon Master Guide. It is not the same you see in my intro with its green cover, but it is the same as the black covers from the 90s. It was the latest released version by Wizards of the Coast, which you can still purchase in PDF format from authorized sellers. This will be the edition we are discussing today and the previous snippet was from. First we will listen to someone misread part of the DMG, then I will point out where they are wrong because they failed to RTFM, and in the process have misinformed and misled many people to misunderstand random encounters in 2nd edition. Before we begin, I must admit the audio has been edited from the original speaker to clean up some noise, and many ums have been removed to protect the innocent.
This is,
You can create your own where you're going to basically do 2d10 roll, and you will end up with, any possibility. Most commonly will be the common, as would be expected, uncommon on both ends. So you can basically see the range from very rare on the low end, very rare on the high end, and then less rare and then common in the very center or on the average rolls, basically. So that would be first. Then you can see what are some of the common, uncommon, rare, and very rare, obviously dependent upon the region that the encounter is taking place and so forth. So for the most part, I think that a DM is going to end up having to tweak this randomness so much that it's probably unnecessary to even do this.
Aside from the fact they failed to read the dice to use and just made random assumptions about random encounters, they proceed to speak about how a DM would need to tweak the table, failing again to bother reading what the book actually says. The DM selects the monsters. The instructions are right there on the page, and in this person's video, but it is not a lack of reading comprehension, just a failure to read in the first place that makes them think this is a universal table, that they should just roll and then look up some monster. But there is more misinformation spread due to failure to read coming.
Should you use random encounters? Some argue that random encounters are foolish and should not be used. These people maintain that everything should be under the control of the DM and there should be no surprises for him while playing the game.
This is important to both random encounters and the misinformation this person spreads due to failing to read the book. The DM will not be surprised because as shown just a moment ago, the DM makes his own random encounter tables. More in-depth guidelines are presented in the book, but they will not be gone over here, as anyone wishing to be a DM for 2nd edition should read the book for themselves, and not blindly make false statements and false assumptions because they just schemed over a few headings and imagine themselves as a god of gaming, which will be stated by this person shortly.
Figure the appropriate level of the particular creature is simple. Look up or calculate the experience points of the creature and check the number of table 55. This will tell you where to place the creature. Again, that's not something that I would roll as a random amount or even check the table and look at. I have enough experience to know how to place appropriate level of creatures or encounters for the player party. If you're looking at the experience points of I'm not even quite sure what they're talking about here. Figuring the appropriate level for the particular creature is simple. Look up and calculate the experience points of the creature and check this number of tables. So if the creature is between 1 and 20 experience points, the creature level is a 1. Why would you even do this? You'd have to look at the player party experience points to determine what should be in there as well. So kind of strange. Like I said, this is a walkthrough. This is a flip through, basically, and kind of the first time that I'm really taking a look at it. And so I'm already seeing some things where I wouldn't necessarily do this.
Maybe instead of just picking small parts and looking at them, read the instructions on how to use the tables you are not familiar with. As you can see in the part he failed to read, each level of a dungeon is a corresponding strength level of monsters. If you are on the 3rd level of the dungeon, then you would expect monsters from 2nd to 5th level. So any creature who gives 21 to 500 experience is appropriate to use on the 3rd level of your dungeon. Notice how that one paragraph this person failed to read gives all the answers to the misunderstanding he has, and then all the misinformation spread again by failing to read, with the excuse it's a flip through. What happens next is the biggest travesty to come from failing to read the book.
I am currently writing an adventure for, it's really for 2nd edition AD&D. However, I'm using the rules and the permissions contained within for Gold and Glory, and this is the 2nd edition, clone, OSR clone of 2nd edition AD&D.
Here we go. The reason that the OSR constantly spread misinformation about any version of Dungeons & Dragons, because they don't care about it, have no need to learn is, and just want to preach about their special snowflake fantasy heartbreaker clones. You are likely to run into these people all over the internet and in real life trying to get you to join their cults, proclaiming that one is the other while spreading misunderstandings because they don't actually know the rules for Dungeons & Dragons, and just clout chase with the shelves full of books they have behind them and videos that they have never even bothered to read. Oh, here comes one now.
For Gold and Glory is literally 2nd edition.
They can never be bothered to read the books and act like they know what they are talking about, while spreading misinformation to people that may have never gotten a chance to see the books. Just last night on Biggest Geekus podcast, one person was unaware that 2nd edition had both secondary skills and non-weapon proficiencies. But that is for another video. Let's continue crushing random encounter misinformation spread by people that wish to DM, but cannot spend the time learning a game, which can surely only provide players with a bad game, or at least provide viewers of their videos with a bad representation of how the game works.
As I'm creating this particular adventure, there's encounters, and even if I were to include a random encounter list of possibilities and checks and such, it still needs to make sense. And the PDF actually showed that as well. I mean, they talk about that in the Dungeon Master's Guide, that ultimately it has to make sense for where, what's going on there. And since, I think as a DM, if I'm going to be rolling on some random table and then having to omit a lot of the rolls because they don't quite fit, then why waste the time making those rolls? It really does have to be designed in a way that I don't believe randomness actually achieves, and it has to make sense. There's something else that they didn't talk about here, or at least I didn't come across it, is that your dungeons or your adventure map, wherever it's taking place, needs to feel like it's a living space.
It does state in the Dungeon Master Guide that encounters should make sense, But again, the failure to actually read the book leads to misinformation being spread because this person thinks they will be ignoring rules that don't make sense. Why in the hell did you create a table with encounters that did not make sense in the first place then? Should anyone actually bother to read Chapter 11 of the DMG, then they will be able to see all these mistakes and more, and the misinformation these sorts of people spread by failing to RTFM, and then be able to find this particular video and mock the person for making it for not even trying to read, then proceeding to make bad adventures to sell to other people that do not work for the system he was intending to design them for due to his ignorance. I say ignorance here, because of Hanlon's rates or the principle that states, do not attribute to malice that which can simply be ignorance. But such ignorance when making a video or otherwise sharing information can cause problems by spreading misinformation. Failure to revisit something like this and leave that misinformation, however, I will attribute to malice. Such failures can only lead to one thing.
I'm going to continue to be wrong.
Yes. Yes, you will. So will many others, unless they step away from the clout chasers and influencers found online, and open the book for themselves and read what is in it. Not just look at a few headers and assume you know everything about it because you are an experienced DM. Read the whole damn book. If anything, experience should bring with it wisdom. And wisdom is knowing you don't know everything and should pay close attention to doing something new. Even it is similar to something you have done before. Stay tuned for the next video in this series, when I decided which bit of information I will tackle next from attention-seeking people online that feel they are the bestest person ever to seek gaming advice from. I will give you a sneak peek of that video now. The end result will always be, read the book for yourself.